Good afternoon to you. It is 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up here, Jennie Taer is a New York Post reporter who just got inside of the terrorists' home in New Orleans, took a tour of it. She'll tell us what she saw and how she got in the first place. That's at 3:30. 4 o'clock, David Strom from Hot Air is with us. 5 o'clock, Congressman Andy Biggs, who was just a part of some big floor drama as the House reelects Speaker Mike Johnson. And then Congressman Scott Perry's here at 5:30. We got a packed show. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Moments ago, Speaker Mike Johnson prevailing in the first round after a couple of vote changes to become Speaker of the House. He is speaking right now. Let's take a listen.
I believe in giving honor where honor is due, and all of us do well to honor our spouses. My wife happens to be here this time. She didn't make it last time. It happened a little sudden. Kelly, would you stand up here in the gallery? Thank you. And we have our 4 children here, Hannah, Abby, Jack, and Will. We all stand up just really quickly. Come on. I wanted to do that. All of us recognize that there are no perks to being a congressman's kid, right? It's all sacrifice. And our spouses put up with so much, endless hours in travel and all the responsibilities upon us. And we're good to remind them how important they are to us and how we could not do the job without them. And so it's appropriate for all of us to do that. Thank you. Thank you, guys. This is a momentous time in the history of our nation. It really is. And as members of the 119th Congress, we are stewards of the great American Revolution that began almost exactly now 250 years ago, 1775 and 1776. It will fall at the time of this Congress, the great anniversary. And in these 2.5 centuries, we've been reminded repeatedly that freedom is never free. And we have stood tall as the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It is without debate. We are the freest, the most powerful, most benevolent nation that has ever been in the history of the world. And it's not by happenstance. We're the ones who settled the West. We're the ones who ended slavery, who laid the transcontinental railroad, who gave women the right to vote, who won 2 world wars, who landed on the moon, and who won the Cold War. Throughout our history, we have done what no one thought was possible. And still, at 250 years old, our nation is actually a young nation. This past fall, I had opportunity to go to the G7 speakers meeting. It was held in Italy. It's the only international trip I took as speaker over the last 14 months because I didn't have time to do it, but it was a quick 3-day jaunt, and met with my colleagues, the speakers of the other parliaments, the great governments around the world. And we talked about that, how really special America is, how unique we are in our place on the globe, and how important it is for us to maintain that. And as I talked to these colleagues from around the world, I thought our closest allies, who recognize how important we are, how important this body, this House is. I thought about how is it that such a young country has become so exceptional, so singular in its importance, that today stands as the world's leader in liberty and the economy and culture. 100 years ago, President Calvin Coolidge answered that very question in his inaugural address. It was March of 100 years ago, exactly almost. He said this: "We best serve our own country and most successfully discharge our obligations to humanity by continuing to be openly and candidly, intensely and scrupulously American." I love that. I love that. Today, yeah, that's right. That's an applause line. Today, my friends, our nation is the envy of the world. Why? Because we have been marked by a spirit and a people who are explicitly that. We are explicitly American. We don't try to be like other nations, and we recognize that a strong America is good for the entire world. And everybody around the globe knows that. That's right.
All right, so Speaker Mike Johnson giving his introductory message to the 119th Congress here. I like the messages. I like the message. I think a positive message about the state of our country and the value that our country brings to the world is good. I think that's not something that a lot of the Democrats, or certainly the most radical elements among them, would agree with. They're probably not nodding along to all of the great moments in American history that Speaker Johnson just brought up, and rightfully so. But here he is, having been reelected Speaker, and this was a close one. Remember, he needed 218 votes to become Speaker of the House. That's exactly what he got today. 218 votes today. Hakeem Jeffries getting 215 from the Democrats. The one holdout in the end ended up being the guy who said, hell no, he's not going to support Mike Johnson among the Republicans, and that was Thomas Massie, the much more libertarian congressman perhaps than any other member of the House. And he ended up voting otherwise. So not for Mike Johnson. The other two who were holdouts for some time today, and they kept the vote open. Remember the drama we had when first of all, Kevin McCarthy was elected in the first place, and then when he was subsequently unseated, there were a lot of votes, a lot of rounds of votes that took place that ended up with this coalition speaker, which is Mike Johnson, who now once again gets the title, thanks in no small part to President Trump's intervention on all of this. But two other lawmakers held out for a while today on the first vote. That includes South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman and Texas Congressman Keith Self. And eventually they did change their votes to Speaker Mike Johnson after sort of intense conversations on the House floor, with Mike Johnson, who was clearly doing his best to give them the kinds of assurances that they needed to get their votes. I said yesterday that I was expecting that this thing was going to go to 2 rounds. Practically did. I was this close. Corey and I were chatting about. I was like, look at me. I got this one right. We expected 2 rounds. Because I knew that there are Republicans, Thomas Massie among them, certainly Ralph Norman, Keith Self, and a number of other lawmakers who didn't actually make their intention known until they circled back to their names at the very end of the vote today. That includes our guest, Congressman Andy Biggs, who joins us at 5 o'clock today. We'll ask him all about that. But we knew that there were Republicans out there who wanted to send a shot across the bow, who wanted to rattle the cage a little bit and say, hey, we're here, and you have to respect us and, by extension, the people who send us to Congress. Now, if you were consuming media a lot of places today, I'm hearing a lot of people who were kind of giving, Karl Rove over on Fox and others, saying things like, this is insanity. What are they doing? What is the point of this? There's nowhere to go. There's no alternative. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And hearing this, I was thinking, well, how exactly? Does Congress have such a high approval rating among the American people right now that we are to reflexively obey and support anything they do? Are we to just collapse always in the face of whatever the establishment wants? Because right now, as I'm looking at it, Congress has an approval rating of anywhere between 13 to 18%, according to all of the most recent available surveys on the question. Nobody approves of the behavior of this Congress. And here you have a speaker who made all sorts of promises that he was going to try and restore regular order, that he was going to give people 72 hours to read bills, that he wasn't going to be a part of Christmas omnibus spending paloozas. And quite unfortunately, Speaker Johnson sort of allowed the passage of time and the negotiation of the establishment to really run the show in so many ways, which has been disappointing. And so should the American people rattle his cage a little bit? You're damn right they should. They should send him a message that they're concerned with how things are going, and they desperately would like to see it improved. And to remind him that he has such a slim margin that his obligation needs to cover not just the establishment, but the conservatives, everybody, a big and diverse Republican Party. He needs to respect them and include them in this process. That's not the way that gigantic spending package, that 1,500-page monstrosity, came together. Members didn't see that bill. They were forced to vote on it. And were it not for the intervention of Donald Trump and his team, that package very well could have become the law. It was a total disaster, and it should have never got there. Speaker Johnson, look, he's not, given the thin margin he has, it's not going to always be the most conservative piece of legislation. He's not going to do exactly what the Freedom Caucus wants. Obviously, he can't. He's got to figure out how to build a coalition in order to get these votes across the finish line. But he can definitely do a lot better job of controlling the narrative, can he? Where was a one-page continuing resolution? How about that? He could have done that. He could have had that out first. One page. We're going to kick it to March. We're going to let Trump control the spending conversation. We're going to pass this thing. We're presenting this. This is the bill. And if Democrats don't vote for it, what they're voting for is a government shutdown. He could have done that right out the gate. He didn't. Instead, the establishment cobbled together a 1,500-page dumpster fire and put it in front of the rest of us and said, you're going to support this now. Luckily, the American people had different ideas. Luckily. Speaker Johnson, I don't know if you have this conversation with friends and family. I do. Speaker Johnson, I like that guy. I like him. He seems like a likable guy. He's a constitutional law guy. He's been fighting for religious liberty much of his career. He speaks well about America. I love the message we were just listening to from him. But do you ever get the impression he's not really a killer? That he's not the guy to cut throats? You need to be. We've got a country to save. President Trump had to intervene. Speaker Johnson couldn't do this on his own today. President Trump had to come into this today. President Trump was making phone calls this morning, reportedly, to members of Congress. He was doing lobbying in order to get Speaker Johnson across the finish line. I'm looking across the MAGAverse, and there's people all coming out of the woodwork saying, you got to support Speaker Johnson, Speaker Johnson. It was an all-hands-on-deck effort to get him across the finish line. That wouldn't be the case if he had an amazing record that he was coming in on. He wouldn't need the whole MAGAverse to do that. So here we are today. And here's what I'm hoping took place behind the scenes. Speaker Johnson made genuine assurances to President Trump that he's going to pursue his agenda to the best of his ability, that he's going to actually get things across the finish line, that he's not going to lie to him about what's possible, that like prior speakers, if you make a claim that you're going to get some sort of funding for a wall, you're going to secure the border, that you'll actually do it. And Speaker Johnson, in the midst of everything today, as he was trying to whip votes, he released a statement saying that we need to return to fiscal sanity. He's right about this, but the concept here was he was trying to convince these Republicans that he is on their side, all of them, that he is on their side. He said the citizens of our great country gave President Trump the White House and Republican control of both chambers of Congress. If we don't follow through on our campaign promise for fiscal responsibility, we don't deserve to hold power. He said we got to tackle waste, fraud, and abuse. We got to advance President Trump's America First agenda. And he said, as Speaker, I commit to the following. 1, create a working group comprised of independent experts not corrupted by lobbyists and special interests to work with DOJ, that's Elon Musk and Vivek, and our committees on implementing recommended government and spending reforms to protect the American taxpayer. Good. 2, task that working group with reviewing existing audits of federal agencies and entities created by Congress and issuing a report to my office for public release. Okay. 3, request House committees undertake aggressive authorizations and appropriations reviews, including providing additional resources where needed to expose irresponsible or illegal practices and hold agencies or individuals accountable that have weaponized government against the American people. He finishes with this. If we want to restore fiscal responsibility, we must start by being transparent about the dollars that are spent, address the issues we find, and then hold those accountable of misspent funds. Republicans have a mandate to implement the America First agenda. And as Speaker, this will be my priority. Now, that's good. Now, I should point out that much of that was just, hey, let's get groups together to issue reports. And that's fine. You can establish as many blue ribbon commissions as you want. But unless you actually move the ball forward, unless you actually get control of all of this, it's just going to be more working groups and more statements and more finger wagging. Republicans have a great opportunity here, a great opportunity. You control both houses. You control the White House. You have a Supreme Court that is likely to look favorably upon what you do so long as it's constitutional. That's what this court is and should be dedicated to. And that means, and right now, in any presidency, all the capital is now. All the capital is now. So Speaker Johnson, he gets through, once again, as Speaker of the House by the skin of his teeth. That's just fine. I'm not hysterical about this. I hear a lot of hysteria out there. There's no reason to be hysterical about this. These guys work for us. A little cage rattling to keep them in line, I'm fine with it. If this thing had stretched on through the weekend, yeah, I'd have problems with it because we got to get President Trump certified so we can get into office on Inauguration Day. But a little cage rattling, Washington needs more of that. Oh, man. Yeah, the game shouldn't be, let's figure out how to keep all of Washington comfortable. No. Not at all. Make them a little uncomfortable. It's fine. Got to be tactical about these things, but a little discomfort for the ruling class, perfectly fine in a world where they don't deserve easy street. Let's see. I've got some calls coming in. Hoke's calling in from Round Hill on line 1. Hello, Hoke. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. I got two comments about Chip Roy. The first one is he chose survival over principle because he got a phone call this morning. And the second one is if Chip Roy were at a convention with 100 last Nobel Prize winners and Jesus Christ himself were leading it, Chip Roy would still think he was the smartest, most righteous guy in the room.
Well, on your first point, I can't even speak to your second, but on your first point, Hoke, we don't really know in the end what led Chip Roy to support Mike Johnson. And I'm hoping, we'll talk to Andy Biggs coming up. He might have some insight into this. But Chip Roy was one of the guys, just like Andy Biggs, who didn't actually vote for Johnson when he was first called upon. Instead, the way they did this, the way they handled this, is once they started going over the names again in the first round, sort of a second call, last call, are you going to vote? They came through. And Chip Roy came through for Johnson. Andy Biggs and others, they all came through for Johnson. So, in other words, there were some holdouts. And, Roy... I've been hearing chatter all day that he wants to be kind of like in a powerful position on the Rules Committee, wants to have more influence, wants to try and get things under control. So we'll see. We'll see if there are any concessions at work here that brought these guys across the table. But it is interesting to see play out because Chip Roy, of course, was very vocal about his concern about Mike Johnson's leadership.
He was too vocal, and that's why I think he took survival over principle because he was going to get primaried by a Trump candidate.
I mean, it's a big deal. You're not wrong. It's a big deal that President Trump got involved in this, and that sent a really clear message. In fact, that's the only reason I think we can say pretty confidently that this thing ended up only being one round. When President Trump exerts his will, it has an impact, clearly, and makes me think.
Rounds.
What's that?
I called 2 rounds and told a friend of mine at work that there would be no more than 2 rounds. So.
Well, I was right there with you, Hoke. I thought it was going to 2, but it ended up being a very delayed one today. Thank you. Thanks, Hoke, very much. There's Hoke in Round Hill. All right, let's see here. I've got Connor calling in from Huntsville now on line 2. Connor, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Appreciate you taking the call. I think you nailed it on Speaker Johnson. He's not a go-for-the-throat kind of guy. I don't think he believes he could win the narrative on the CR. And to that degree, he needs to cultivate relationships with the new media. I never see him, I never hear him on any of WMAL shows. Maybe I missed it. He's got to communicate in a different way, and he can't fight the way that the establishment has fought in the past. He's got to develop some tools and become a wartime consigliere because that's what it's going to take.
The job is a hard one. I'm not discounting that at all. But I just my sense is that it requires more aggression than we've seen. That's it. And Mike Johnson, Speaker Johnson was on with us some time ago. We did have him a while ago now, but he has an open invitation to be on this program. I'd love to talk to him again. And talk about the business of the American people because he's got an important role in that, and I want him to succeed. Don't you, Connor?
Absolutely, he needs to succeed, but he's got to get down in the dirt with them.
Yeah.
He can't. the can't bring the boxing rules to a street fight.
Yes. Yeah, you have to be prepared for these fights, no question. All right. Hey, Connor, thank you for that. So I appreciate that. Let me see. I got Donna calling in from Frederick right now on line 3. Hey, Donna, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Vince. Happy New Year. I just want to say I'm actually relieved Speaker Johnson got in. I have to remind everybody out there that this is information warfare that we're living through right now. And the problem really is the rhinos and the Dems versus the conservative wing, Trump's wing. So we have to keep that in mind. And I think what Trump does, even with Mike Johnson, is very strategic. So trust in him, trust in God,
yes,
and trust in yourselves, because we have the power.
Yeah. Well, look, here, check out Trump's ledger today. Trump went to bat. He saved Mike Johnson's career today. Mike Johnson would do well to heed that as he moves forward. This is the guy who puts you in this position. Now, what are you going to do for the voters who put Trump in the White House again? Stay with us. We're going to chat with an excellent reporter, an old colleague of mine, who just got inside of a terrorist's home and told the world about what she found. Jennie Taer joins us next. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, David Strom from Hot Air will be with us at 4 o'clock as Biden and company are trying to salt the earth before they leave office. Oh, it's awful. Andy Biggs, the congressman, will be with us at 5 o'clock, part of that House Speaker drama today. And then Congressman Scott Perry joins us at 5:30. We'll get his take on that as well. And Liz Cheney receiving a presidential medal, for all of her great work for the country. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Jabbar, that's the terrorist in New Orleans who drove a car down Bourbon Street, slaughtering so many Americans on New Year's. And since then, there's been a lot of digging into who he is and his motivations. The FBI saying he acted alone, that he was definitely inspired by ISIS to do it. But then after the FBI went and checked out his house, they left, and guess who went in next? A New York Post reporter by the name of Jennie Taer. And she captured video. Here's what the audio sounds like from her tour of the home.
We are here inside the New Orleans terrorist home. You can see that it's been clearly destroyed, the door at least, from the FBI raid yesterday. But if we walk through the home, we see some signs of what he was up to. He had this work area here, lots of different chemicals splayed around, and different electronics. This is, again, a work setup. Left receipts, just very unkempt in here. If we go over here, actually, you can see the Department of Justice documents here, the search warrant, and the property that they recorded here, which seems to be a lot of chemicals. Again, just left in disarray.
An amazing perspective of a terrorist's home, a crime scene that she walked into. Jennie Taer, reporter for the New York Post, joins us now. Jennie, so good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And congratulations on this scoop. I see a lot of speculation online. They're like, how did she get this? How is this even possible? This must be a setup. How did you get it? Would you explain how you ended up walking in this home?
Yeah, I mean, this is the result of the fact that the FBI left this home after raiding it without securing it. They did not make an active crime scene after they left the night before. And I saw the home, and we all saw the home.
Yeah.
Many reporters were around that area. And then we could all spot that basically the door was hanging by barely a hinge. And that's the state that it was left in by the federal authorities who had raided it. And not only that, but all of the materials in there that have been left, just hazardous chemicals, and a list of actually what they had seen during the search warrants they executed of those materials, which were the ingredients to make a pipe bomb. So this is, all just within a couple of days of the attack. And then, of course, following this video coming out today, the authorities, the Harris County Sheriff's Office, the FBI returned to the scene, returned to the home, secured it by putting its fence back up, and they actually towed the terrorist's vehicle today. But when they left it originally, it was completely open and unsecured.
Yeah, I noticed in your video, you don't really physically manage anything in the home. You're not meddling with anything. You're just walking through and capturing footage, reflecting on what you're seeing. And I was struck by, there's the workbench, and it seems like there were a lot of chemicals that must have been there. The FBI even has a list of the things they took into custody, including all of these chemicals. The guy seems like he had a bomb-making workshop going on inside of this home.
Right. That's what his work table seemed to give us a glimpse into, that he had in his bedroom, where you could see he left all of his personal belongings. And we spoke to his next door neighbor, who said he spoke with the terrorist the day that he left for New Orleans, and he knew he was bound for New Orleans, and he told the neighbor that, he was moving out. It was the end of his lease on the 34th, and that, he was going to a furnished home in New Orleans and didn't need help carrying any furniture into his truck. And so that's where all of this leads us to the fact that the home looks like somebody had been there within just days. And that every pullable left behind.
Yes.
His list books, his guns, one of them was open on the top of his bookshelf to kind of a chilling passage about martyrdom. So we kind of have, a glimpse into what state his home was in and what he was going through as he was leaving to carry out this clearly premeditated attack.
So a guy goes and barrels his car into American citizens, kills a lot of people, injures many more. You would think that the FBI, if it was trying to prevent terrorism, would be doing everything it could to quickly ascertain who he is, what his motivations were, and maybe to prevent him from doing it again. But as you describe, they didn't secure the crime scene at all. And it seems to me that your video kind of induced them to return to it and actually start working on it and securing it after you had already captured this video, as you just laid out. I mean, is it your impression that the FBI is kind of just responding to events as they happen rather than taking a proactive effort to get to the bottom of this?
Exactly. The whole theme here is that they've been extremely reactive. We saw that from the start of this, and they've made significant errors in their public messaging on this investigation. They initially told the public that this was not a terrorist act. Then they had to backtrack on that. They said this was part of a terror cell. Then they had to backtrack on that and say he acted alone. And now, of course, they see that the public was aware of the state of disarray and the fact that this home was open, all of the chemicals out, the fact that someone went in there and described it. Yeah. Now they're again being more and more reactive when it comes to this investigation. You
talked to the neighbor and talking about the fact is that this guy claimed he was moving to a new location but didn't bring any furniture with him because it was all furnished. His new place was furnished, he claimed, to justify why he had this pickup truck and that he drove it in the end to kill all these people. What else are you hearing from the community? I know that there's a mosque that he was a member of that has tried to shut down communications with the public. What are you hearing?
Yeah, so this mosque, we've spoken to some individuals at the mosque and visited the mosque. It's down the street. It seems like the whole community goes there to worship. However, the congregants there say that they never saw him at the mosque. The next door neighbor also attended the mosque, and he told us that he never saw him there and that he found it strange. He kind of would notice that he would pray alone in his home, and we could see all of the different signs of that, his prayer rugs, his prayer books. But again, this is a majority Muslim community. and actually the street itself seems like a very tight-knit Muslim community, with many of the neighbors being from countries in South Asia. So it's a very tight-knit Muslim community.
And is anyone else speaking to you? What's their reaction to the fact that their neighbor just carried out this attack?
Yeah, so I mean, the neighbors that had interacted with him were shocked by this, because they had, while limited interactions, they had this impression that he was very normal, kind, would say hi when he walked by them on the street, but there was nothing that would give them the feeling that this is someone who's radicalized and is a terrorist. And I think there's so many questions that all of us have, because he didn't have such a clear path here. You know, his family is speaking out and saying that, you know, they, you know, saw him kind of go off the beaten path after his many divorces, and, you know, he found his way to Islam at some point. He is a local here. You know, there's a lot of questions as to how someone, you know, who served in the military, you know, radicalized and, you know, went against the people that he took an oath at one point to defend. And so we still don't know why or how that happened.
Yep.
Even when you have the brothers speaking out or members of the family, and it's just this big question mark in this investigation that the FBI needs to get to the bottom of.
So the FBI seems to be speaking with certainty now, Jennie Taer, although they've changed their position big time in just a 48-hour window or so. They're speaking with certainty. They say he acted alone, that he was 100% inspired by ISIS. They're acting pretty confident. They think he acted alone. What are your concerns with the FBI's assertions, if any?
I think the FBI has a lot of work to do when it comes to the public perception. When it comes to this investigation, they have dropped the ball on public messaging. Like I said, with saying this was not a terrorist act, then having to backtrack that, and other details that were key to this investigation and to, you know, public perception. And on top of that, their job in securing communities and ensuring that these things don't happen is also on the line, that people are looking at their reputation now. And, you know, why was this not thwarted before it happened? When this individual was posting on social media, there were outward signs of his intentions here. And it's very alarming, I think, to the public to see that the FBI goes after, you know, mothers, you know, helping their kids with school and just hoping they get a good education, or they go after certain religious groups, and at the same time dropping the ball on such big, major investigations that relate to national security.
Yeah, especially because the FBI is now claiming that they've got all this evidence demonstrating that this guy was radicalized at least as late as last summer, that he was 100% inspired by ISIS. All these social media videos indicating his desire to conduct this attack. And, you know, you do wonder to what extent the FBI missed this because of opportunity cost. They were focused on all of the wrong things, criminalizing standard fare American political exchanges rather than trying to prevent these types of terror attacks.
Right, exactly. And I think it's something that has to be assessed, and especially now as well with the military, because we see that both of the terrorists in the Las Vegas attack, in the New Orleans attack, were both veterans, and so, or were both in the military. And so that's a big thread to all of this, and something that also the Department of Defense, I think, has to look at when it comes to this issue. You know, I'm sure that the FBI will look into this, but, you know, we need answers on this. The American people need answers. It's still, again, not clear when or how or even why this individual, this terrorist, became radicalized.
Yeah. Yeah. And meanwhile, remember, it was 2021 that that the Biden administration issued this stand down order to the military. They were trying to root out anybody who may have thought that January 6th was a justified protest. That's what they focused on, and instead of stopping the kind of terror attack we saw, especially play out in New Orleans. It's unbelievable. Jennie Taer, thank you for just being a great reporter, for digging in, and for sharing your findings with us today. Great to talk to you as always. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
All right, Tom is calling in from Hancock, Maryland on line 1. Hello, Tom. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Great, Tom. What's on your mind?
Hey, Happy New Year.
Same
Look,
to you.
I find it really interesting that throughout the entire Biden administration here, every time they're trying to cover something up, 2 or 3 distractions all of a sudden pop up. What happened to them drones, Vince? Did they fly back to outer space?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I know what you're saying. You know, the drone story really has been bugging me persistently ever since. And so, you know, Corey's brother, Corey is our producer. Corey's brother is a local New Jersey official. We had him on the show to talk about all the drones. And their family, they haven't seen this phenomenon recently. And in fact, other people in New Jersey apparently not seeing them quite as much. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen in the first place. And the desire to get to the bottom of it seems to have basically dried up. Everyone was like, well, I guess we'll never solve this one. And they ran off, to your point.
That's crazy, man.
Yep.
It keeps happening over and over again. Whatever. I am so glad we finally got some people in there that's going to take care of us.
God,
you know?
I hope so. I hope they do. Yeah. All right.
Hey, let me ask you one quick question.
Yeah.
Presidential pardons, okay? Biden pardons somebody for the next 14 years. Does that include civil suits?
No.
No.
He can pardon them. His pardon is limited to federal criminal violations.
Right. Well, what if, like, everybody around the world got together and filed a class action suit against all of these puppies, I'll be polite, for murder because of Wuhan and COVID?
Yeah, and so I mean, it's entirely a reasonable question. It's crazy that we haven't had any accountability. I mean, it's not crazy; it's predictable, but it's appalling. How many times have I said that? Not shocking, but appalling. Yeah,
Right.
and which is why they're talking about pardons for Fauci now.
Right, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There was pictures of him and Obama and Bill Gates all out there at the laboratory in Wuhan.
No, there weren't. There was photos of the 3 of them at the lab in Wuhan.
Well, I don't know of all 3 together, but I did see Fauci and them, I think, separately. Now, it might have been photoshopped, but back at the beginning, there was pictures of them hanging out at the lab in Wuhan.
Well, I'll tell you what. We don't even need photos. We know that Fauci was involved in sending all that funding to Wuhan and signing off on it and giving it to EcoHealth Alliance. And, of course, the ensuing disaster that came from all of that. Photos would be just the cherry on top. But boy, the evidence trail is crystal clear, which is why these guys should be held accountable, Tom. I'm totally right there with you. Thank you, Tom. That's Tom in Hancock, Maryland. It is amazing, isn't it? Just the lack of accountability here. And so this is why, Tom made this point that thank God we have people in there who can bring some accountability. I hope so. You see what Barry Loudermilk and company did this week? They released this report on the pipe bomber from January 6th, technically January 5th, the one that the FBI decided not to really spend any time chasing. They chased people who stood on the grass outside of the Capitol building, but the pipe bomber guy, nothing. So Congress released a report this week indicating that, they had a couple of suspects. They talked to some people, but they never really got to the bottom of it, so the trail went cold. And right after the report came out, the Washington field office of the FBI yesterday started releasing new information. They released a new video of the suspect planting the bomb outside of the DNC. They released height estimates. They said he was 5'7", plus or minus 1.5 inches. Well, how good is that? plus or minus 1.5 inches. So he could be 5'5.5", or he could be 5'9", or excuse me, 5'8.5", somewhere in that range. Oh, what? That really narrows it down. Thanks for your help, FBI. And they say they're still looking for information. They just want everybody to know that there's still a big reward available to get to the bottom of it. If you could just find this guy of one of the most standard height ranges in American history. If you can find him, you will be the lucky winner of the reward. Oh, please, spare us. What a stupid CYA posting by the FBI's Washington field office yesterday. And all of the deceit, aren't you sick of it? It makes you skeptical of literally everything you hear from the government. So Barry Loudermilk's report indicates, for instance, that when the FBI claims it was trying to find the pipe bomber, they went to all the cell phone companies and they collected all the cell data from the area. And they said, you know what? Shoot, we ran into this problem. All the cell data was corrupted. So we weren't able to use it in order to establish who exactly the suspect was. You know what the cell phone companies say about that? They say that's not true. They told Barry Loudermilk's committee, they said, no, all the cell data we have, none of it's corrupted. It's perfectly fine. We've got it all. We've got it all. So both things can't be true. Either the cell phone data is corrupted and the cell phone companies are lying, or your FBI is lying to you again. Lying to you. Presumably because they don't want to catch the guy who was responsible for laying the pipe bombs outside of the RNC and the DNC. And it still doesn't even make sense. The timelines don't make sense. That whole story stinks to high heaven. Why was Kamala Harris staying at the DNC while they were aware there was a pipe bomb outside? Why didn't they rush evacuate her out of the building? Again, nothing about it adds up. There's no urgency with that story. None. And now the FBI wants to play a game of pretend with you this week that they're still looking for answers. This guy in a hoodie whose face is completely covered with these Nike sneakers on. Oh yeah, would somebody help us find him? Where was this post 4 years ago? Why didn't I see this video a long time ago? It's not like the video would have been hard for you to share. Does it give away sources and methods for you to share this video? No, you just shared it yesterday. You seemed no problem then. Why not in 2021? Why are you dragging your feet with the pipe bomb guy? It's like, kind of seems like actually the single most important person to hunt down on January 6th. Not the grandma who's waving an American flag inside the rotunda. You may have your priorities jacked up. Coming up, David Strom.